The A7 series has a great value proposition in terms of specs, frame rates, dynamic range, it has S-Log, but at the same time, my heart yearns for that Canon look.
We have great business coaching materials that people are taking advantage of from all over the world. We come together once a month and review these materials and work on people's businesses. But you may not be sure if this is right for you. So come join us. Join us on our free coaching call. Go to theslanted.com where you can sign up today. Join us for that call and you'll see what we're doing. You'll see if it works for you and your business. I know it well, but come and join us and you'll see if it does. Hi, this is JP Morgan.
This is Kenneth Merrill.
And we're back to do another camera comparison. You may have saw the one we did on the Ursa Mini and the Alexa.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
It was. We're now going to take a look at the Canon 5D Mark IV and the A7R II. This is something I'm really interested in because I have an A7R II and I'm curious about how it, as video, and how it compares with the Mark IV.
The A7 series has a great value proposition in terms of specs, frame rates, dynamic range, it has S-Log, but at the same time, my heart yearns for that Canon look. First off, we should mention that because the 5D Mark IV doesn't come with any flat picture profiles, I already felt like the test was a little bit biased towards the Sony. I wanted to get the flattest, most dynamic range I could out of the 5D Mark IV. So I found Andrew Reed's EOS HD C-Log profile. Now he made this using a tool that Canon offers on their website. It allows you to create custom picture profiles like CineStyle or ProLost, these ones that are years old. Well, he made a C-Log one that is, he says, very comparable to the C-Log you'll find in the C100 or the 1DC, that kind of thing. So we downloaded that. We wanted to put it to the test as well. But we wanted to, in case you don't feel like spending $10 or $30 or however much it turns out to be on that, we did also test it with just a standard neutral looking camera.
Yeah, which is interesting to see the two of those and see how different they are, because it's a very different look.
Quite different.
Yeah. Let's take a look at what we've done. We've done our camera test again, where we're going to try to push these things, overexpose them and underexpose them, both these cameras, and just see how they hold up, how the color holds up, and just how far you can push the image.
We are shooting compressed 8-bit footage here, so you're not, we can't expect it to push and pull the same way Alexa footage does, or Ursa Mini, or Red, or whatever. But, if you're shooting on a low budget and you don't have the lights, you're shooting out in the street at night, you want to know how far can I push this thing in terms of ISO, or underexposure, or overexposure. Can I pull back those highlights? So
let's get started. Let's take a look at it. So we have our standard dresses and colors up there. We're looking at the highlights versus the shadows. And we're starting off at, a proper exposure at f10 and 4K for the Canon. So.
Now, as you go from the C-Log to this neutral flat profile, you'll notice the neutral flat is more magenta. The C-Log definitely skews green, which is kind of consistent with most C-Log profiles, but as you'll see later, it kind of affects the color.
So now the Sony, the A7R II, has also got, it's a little towards the green side.
Yeah, the Sony look in general does tend a little more green. I actually added a little bit of magenta to these images just because that's what I would do in real life. If I was actually putting this in a movie, I would have color corrected it more to get more pleasing images out of them. But you look at how they're handling this overexposure, and already I feel like it's retaining detail and tonality in her face much better. And look at
you're talking about the Sony.
About the Sony,
the Sony is handling the overexposure incredibly well, but the Canon starts to fall apart at +2. It's just like
+2 stops. It's already gone.
Yeah, it's pretty much gone in neutral or in the C-Log.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter either which one you use.
Doesn't like to be overexposed. That's for sure. Whereas the Sony at +2 is still looking really clean.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised by how, I knew there was dynamic range, but I didn't know you'd be able to pull that much information back.
Yeah, look at +3 with the Canon.
It's gone.
Oh my word,
it's terrible.
It's terrible. Yeah, there's nothing usable there.
At this point, I think I just stopped displaying. We went up to like +5 or +6 with the
Yeah.
Canon. I just stopped because
It's
there's
like,
no point.
no
You would
reason.
never use it.
Yeah. But the Sony at +3 is still hanging together, looking very
can
good.
Totally use it. And you know what? This actually goes back to what a lot of people say about S-Log is you really should overexpose just a little bit. Not by 3 stops, but 1 stop is pretty normal
To
overexpose.
Yeah. See, and it's so nice on this A7R too because it's the 800 ISO is native versus the A7S was 3200.
Yeah, it's much more manageable.
Yeah, much more manageable. You know, you're not stacking on the NDs a pile. You know.
Here you have EV +5. The Sony finally clips.
At +5, it's starting to see the height. Yeah,
pretty amazing.
At +6 is pretty much unusable.
Really, that's comparable to the Alexa, or to the not the Alexa, the Ursa Mini.
It is.
That's almost exactly where the Ursa Mini clipped.
Yep. Yeah.
And the color information is actually pretty comparable too.
Yep, it really is. So that's Sony. It handles that overexposure in that S-Log extremely well.
Now, with this underexposure, we added a variable ND to the lens to prevent modifying any other settings. It added some softness and a little bit of color shift.
It did.
And a little bit of vignetting in some cases. So that's an unfortunate side effect, but I hope that we can still kind of see where is noise introduced when we push these images up from underexposure.
Well, we'll still be able to see that, and it's consistent with all the cameras. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to underexposing, it's interesting because the Canon is already at -1 is looking a little more clean and a little more comfortable.
It really is.
Yeah.
Almost as soon as you underexpose the S-Log, it starts to fall apart.
Yeah, S-Log does not like that at all.
You look at EV -1 on the Sony in the dress, and even her hair is just dancing like crazy.
Well, yeah,
so
look
much
at the
noise.
pink dress on the side is really, whereas the Canon at -2 is, but the color shifting, it's...
Yeah, I noticed the downside of this C-Log, it may keep a little more of that, it may not punch colors in the highlights as much, but that has a downside. When you underexpose, the color just falls apart.
Yeah.
Whereas if you shoot in that neutral profile, you keep that color.
Look at the -2 on the Sony is just, it's alive, man. It's like,
Yeah.
so if you're shooting S-Log on the R2, you definitely got to overexpose it by a stop.
Never underexpose.
No.
At EV -3, the neutral flat profile on the Canon really stands out compared to the C-Log.
Yep.
The C-Log, I almost couldn't pull those shadows away from the blacks, whereas the Canon didn't take too much adjustment.
Yeah, at 3, this thing it just looks really terrible.
Yeah.
It's just, there is so much noise everywhere, and I mean across the whole image. Although at -4, the Canon is still, I mean, there's
Usable.
noise, but you could use it absolutely.
And with the neutral flat image,
yeah,
it's
like pretty
clean.
Pretty clean, man.
And the colors are retained really well.
really
Her skin
are.
tone still has all of the tonality that you need there.
So do you feel like with the Canons you should underexpose them a little bit?
Yeah, if you're going to lean, I mean, obviously proper
I mean,
exposure is the way to go.
exposures, yeah.
But
Maybe we
if
should
you're
just
shooting,
make it exposed correctly.
but if you're shooting in a high contrast situation, you need to hold, you know, a really harsh rim from the sun or something like that. Yeah, I would underexpose. Keep those highlights from clipping, and maybe bring it up by a stop and post. I don't think it's going to hurt you at all.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. Well, that brings up the next. Well, let's look at the ISO and how the ISO compares on these, because boy, that Canon at 100 ISO, the color is just poppy and
the
poppy, is that a word?
The way that the light falls off on her face, the way it wraps is so soft.
It is.
It's
it
just
really is.
great.
The highlight that's the highlights into that shadow through that core of the lighting on her face is pretty clean, pretty soft, and pretty nice transition.
This was just shot in a straight neutral profile in the camera. No adjustments to contrast or anything. So the colors are a little more punchy, but I mean, I think it looks nice. This is an image that you could just take and edit and use.
Absolutely.
No color correction needed.
No. And even at 800, if it's
Clean as whistle.
clean 1 through 8, I mean, you wouldn't feel that much difference at 400 to 100, you know, to even 800, right?
Yeah, I think I only see noise being introduced at 3200. I mean, even looking at 1600.
1600 is pretty clean.
I'm only seeing a tiny bit of noise in some of the shadows on the pink dress.
Now remember, this is the Canon, and the Canon has a crop factor. They do not have a full frame. We're looking at a full frame on the Sony, and we're looking at a crop on the Canon.
So at 6400 ISO, that's when you really start to see the noise come out, and then at 12,000, I mean, what can you expect from 12,000? But it's usable in a pinch. I would use this.
In a
And
pinch?
apply some neat video or something, and you might get lucky.
Yeah, yeah. If you're doing something in like a, an event or something, you really got to be, got to push the ISO. You can get away with it.
Now, what I'm seeing here is the Sony A7R II, again, is a little muddy. The 4K isn't quite as sharp as the 5D Mark IV.
Doesn't seem like it, does it?
But I have heard...
But you're on a crop factor with the Canon, and that makes a difference.
And I've heard that shooting in a Super 35 crop with the A7R II actually does make it sharper. In fact, we have some close-ups later to prove it.
We do show that. So what's the downside of shooting in that crop factor on the Sony? I mean, do you need the full frame 4K? So maybe Canon got it right. They've got that crop factor, and that's all you need.
That's all you need. I think there are upsides and downsides to both.
So 1600 for the Sony
still looks pretty clean.
Still looks very clean.
3200 looks clean. Honestly, I think they're very comparable.
They are.
In terms of ISO.
That's really surprising to me, actually. I thought the Sony would really outperform the Canon.
I actually expected the opposite.
Really?
Yeah. Just based on, but then again, we're not shooting in S-Log. We are shooting in.
Is this a Sony? Is that dirt on my sensor? It sure is.
Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was the lens.
No, and I should have cleaned it. If I had noticed it, I would have cleaned it.
At 12,000 ISO, the Sony definitely is very muddy. Much muddier. The noise may be comparable, but it's much muddier.
Yeah, I don't think you can get away with that as easily as the Canon.
So here we have the Canon shooting full frame 2K, which it does if you need that full frame look. It's only 2K. Compared to the cropped 4K though, the sharpness, the difference is immense.
Yeah.
And it's just so much clearer. The
crop is so much clearer than the 2K.
Yeah, the crop is so much clearer. The Sony shoots...
it's 2K, 4K.
I mean, yeah, it's going to be clear.
Yeah.
Sony 4K in the Super 35 actually turns out to be sharper than the 4K in the full frame. That's because the full frame has to pixel bin. Whereas the crop frame is taking just pixel for pixel all of the data. So you look at the detail in her eyelashes and her eyes, even her skin texture.
Yeah.
The full frame is a little bit soft, and then you cut to the crop, very clear.
Yeah, very clear.
So here, we want to shoot a really extreme high dynamic range situation. Of course, you would never shoot this without any lights. That would be very foolish.
That would be dumb.
But what we want to see is, if you're shooting a high contrast scenario where you have these deep shadows and these bright highlights like clouds or trees, with sunlight on, bright window, things like that, what's going to hold? Even if you light your subject properly, you might have these elements that are too dark or too bright, and you can't bring them back with, you can't control it.
You can only get so much light on a subject inside. If you're looking out a window, I mean, you're never going to get an LED unless you're putting a 5 or a 10, K up there. It's just not going to work.
And what we're finding with this footage is that the Sony in S-Log vastly outperforms the Canon in C-Log.
It holds that range is far greater.
Yeah.
I mean, you're seeing great detail outside the window. You're seeing the detail in her hair and her face.
We actually had to push, playing with the aperture, we had to push pretty far just to get the outside to clip.
Yeah.
So the Sony definitely wins.
Yeah. Whereas the Canon, it's just there's nothing out there.
Yeah. Even with a flat profile like the C-Log that Andrew Reed created, it's just no match.
Yeah. Well, you can certainly see that. The footage bears that out.
Right.
You really, you're looking right at the dead sun out there, and there was no light on her face inside at all.
Not at all. So what are the advantages and disadvantages? Well, we should talk, when the 5D announcement came out, were you a little disappointed?
Absolutely.
I was a little disappointed.
Completely. I was completely disappointed because it wasn't full frame 4K.
Yeah, exactly. That was what everyone wanted, what everyone expected, and they just couldn't do it. But as we're seeing, that may have been the smarter choice because the full frame on the Sony is a little muddier. What are the other disadvantages? You look online, they say the Super 35 4K on the A7R II is sharper.
A little sharper.
The noise is less. The con of the Super 35 is the rolling shutter is terrible.
And that's a huge con.
It's a huge con.
If you're panning and things, you're going to start to feel that rolling shutter. Depending on if you got a brick wall back there, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
it's just not going to work. So that's the con, is the rolling shutter. On both of them.
Yeah.
When you go to that Super 35, it's you have that issue.
Yeah.
I just wonder if Canon isn't doing this thing like, well, we're not going to give you a full frame in the Mark IV series because we got the 1DC.
Yeah,
you know,
probably.
and that's our 4K
That's
full
probably
frame camera.
That's
you
probably
know?
it.
And I don't know. I mean, you certainly have with the Mark III or Mark IV, you've got a 30 plus megapixel still image.
30,
I bet the
32.
Sony is a 40
42,
plus,
yeah.
you know, megapixel image. So you really they made a great. I mean, that's a lot. You've gone from 21 to 40 or to 31. I mean, that's a big jump.
30 megapixels is a lot.
It's a lot.
What it comes down to is there are a lot of reasons to own both cameras. I think if
That's
you're
frustrating, man. I want there to be a clear winner. I want there to be a knockout here.
I know. But if you're gonna, I think if you're shooting in controlled light situations, which you are most of the time, I honestly think the color is much better out of the Canon.
You like the color out of the Canon.
You shoot that neutral profile, and the color was perfect right out of the camera. Whereas the Sony, granted, we were shooting S-Log in that more punchy profile we did with the ISO tests, the PP1, picture profile 1, the color did look better, but it was punchier.
It was more punchy. Yeah, a little more contrasting.
I don't know. I like the Canon.
You like the Canon?
And it's less muddy. And if you're shooting stills, even though the Sony is 40 megapixels, it's just such a pain to use.
You know,
I'm not even a photographer, and I say
it is definitely not as quick and as intuitive as the Canon. The Canons are just, you see, you shoot, your preview on the back is quick, it's just easy to use. I've got to double click on the Sony to see my previews, to clear them so I can take my next picture. You know, there's just some things about it that just are a little difficult. But I shoot commercials and things with the A7R II and with the A7S still, but I'm using the Atomos recorders. Yeah, I'm going out to the flame, you know, which is...
But even then, we look at the internal codec on this thing, and you're pushing it plus 4 stops of exposure and bringing it back. It's incredible.
It is incredible.
That really does rival cameras, the two cameras we tested last time.
Yeah, You're talking about rival two cameras. The cheap version was twice as much, you know, so...
And I mean, I'm not...
It'd be interesting to see those two head-to-head, the Ursa Mini.
The Ursa Mini and the A7R II.
A7R II. It'd be interesting to see that. But.
So there are a lot of reasons to own both cameras. I think it really just comes down to the right tool for the right job. If you need slow motion in 4K, well, sorry, you can't use Canon. Ever. Not even the C300 Mark II.
Yeah, that's so crazy. So the A7S II has 120 frames.
120 frames in what, 1080p?
1080p.
I mean, come on, Canon.
Yeah, why can't they figure that out? So Sony is lighter because it's the mirrorless camera. It's not as heavy. The Mark IV is all the same camera. The buttons are in the same places. It's just if you've got a Mark III, you won't know the difference almost.
Yeah.
You know?
The menus do seem a bit simplified.
They are.
And Canon definitely has that over Sony.
Yeah.
I cannot stand Sony menus.
You're absolutely right. Sony has a lot more depth in their menus. It does a lot more things.
It's customizable, which is nice, but screw that.
Yeah, make it simple. No, Canon did simplify their menus even a little bit as you look at it. So I shouldn't tell you it's exactly the same because it's not. You know, just the readouts and some of the displays and things are very different. But just the intuitive use of the, where your magnification button is, where your white balance is, all those things are in the same place. And so that, I think, is really nice.
Anyways, if you're going to choose between one of the two cameras, good luck, because they're both pretty great in their own way.
It's going to be a tough choice. So put in your comments why you think one is better than the other. Let's hear it. Let's get a conversation about this.
My bet is that almost everybody's going to say the Sony's better.
You think so?
I think so. People hate Canon. Even though and you know what's funny? They hate it because they love it. Because nobody does the color like Canon does, and so it just kills them that they won't do the features.
Canon just has too much of the market, too big,
One final note is, I will say this for Canon. Even though they don't have the feature set, they don't have the dynamic range, and man, they're sure stingy on just about everything, they are robust and they can take a beating. I mean, just the way you treat your camera equipment and your 5D3s are still going. I have a C300 Mark II. I dropped my C300 Mark II like 5 feet onto rock, like my second day of shooting with it. Almost had a heart attack, and I picked it up and it was totally fine. Hasn't given me a hiccup since.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. Now, I've not had problems with the Sony A7R II or the Sony A7S. I've used it, and they get the same abuse.
Yeah.
So my only, well, I shouldn't say my only, but a huge drawback for me is I feel like I'm cleaning the sensor all the time on the Sony. And even in this footage, you can see some sensor issues in there.
It might be because the gate is so close.
Well, yeah, no, you open that up and
the sensor's right there.
You know, you're in trouble. You know, it's all right there. So which one's better, the A7R II or the Mark IV? Put it in the comments. Give us your reasons. Give us your thoughts. Let's round this out. Get information in there that we didn't get, so we can really finally make a decision.
We need an answer.
We do.
Right
we need
now.
the answer. So keep those counters rolling. Keep on clicking. Don't miss out on this great giveaway, a complete studio package from Dynalite, an A6, a softbox, and a speed ring. Get over to theslantlens.com. It's $1,000 worth of stuff. Don't forget to subscribe to the Slanted Lens. Like us on Facebook. Tell your mother about us. Tell your mother's mother about us.